Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Cheyenne. I don't know how to start off YouTube videos yet, but I figure I should say my name. Today I wanted to make a video about my top solo travel tips. I've only gone on one solo trip, so I'm not an expert by any means. But I think that I have some pointers that would be helpful for somebody who is thinking about going on a solo trip or is actively preparing to go on a solo trip. So I have about 20 tips altogether. I have my laptop over here that I'll be reading off of. I also have my coffee. I'm drinking decaf Chamberlain coffee out of my Chamberlain coffee mug because I am nothing if not an Emma Chamberlain stain. So we have this. I thought it would be fun to make this like a cute couch and coffee kind of video. Also, I'm trying to get creative with where I can film things in my apartment because it's fairly small. So we're trying out this scenery. A lot of my tips are going to be location specific, so depending on where you're going, these may or may not be as applicable. For context, to set the scene, I went on my solo trip last April through May. I was gone for 3.5 weeks, and I went between Portugal, France, England, and Scotland. So a lot of these tips are going to be based specifically on my experiences in those places overall, or in specifically one or two of the places I'll mention. But so for lodging, I stayed at Airbnbs. I don't think I'm built for a hostel. That gave me a lot of anxiety, the thought of a hostel. I know a lot of people really love hostels and they've met really great people. I don't have any bad experiences. I just am not really interested in trying out a hostel, but they're very budget friendly and plentiful. So definitely check that out if that sounds like something that you would be interested in. I did a lot of research on what neighborhoods I wanted to stay in the cities that I was in. And then I looked on Airbnb for superhosts and I stayed with superhosts just so I felt the most comfortable. And the main thought that I had in mind was having my own place and then also being in a neighborhood where I feel comfortable walking alone at night specifically. So my very first tip is, depending on where you're going, you're going to want to decide on whether to bring a pack or a suitcase, like a roller suitcase. I opted to go for a Baboon to the Moon duffel bag for my trip because I wanted to carry everything with me. And my first stop was Lisbon in Portugal, and I know that they had cobblestone type roads and that it would just not be conducive to have a roller suitcase. I did end up getting a roller suitcase in London because at that point in the trip, I was a couple weeks into the trip and I was kind of annoyed not being able to shop or really do much of that. I was kind of limited in what I was able to eat also, so I was like, okay, something's got to give. I got to be able to do something. So I ended up getting a suitcase. Kind of tied into that same first tip is to pack light, but save room for shopping. You can take like a brochure, small things. It doesn't have to be anything big, but definitely save some extra room for souvenirs and things like that. My cat literally has to use the litter box right when I start this video. Ugh. So since I was packing so light, I had to be really picky on what I took with me. So I took into account the season that I was going to be there. It was spring, so I knew it was going to be fairly warm. It wasn't going to be like a crazy winter situation. So my cat, I swear. I also knew there was going to be a difference in temperatures between places I visited. So I knew Portugal was going to be warmer and that the UK was going to be cooler. So I tried to kind of find a balance of what would be best. So I ended up packing, this is off of memory, but this is like a synopsis of what I remember packing. I brought a pair, this cat is losing his mind. packed a pair of black jeans, a pair of blue jeans, a couple short sleeves, basic colors, a couple long sleeves, basic colors, a skirt, a light jacket, and a heavy jacket, or like a sweater. I think I brought a sweater and then a heavy jacket. Um, Tennis shoes, and then I brought Toms as kind of like a more formal shoe, but also a walkable shoe. I ended up buying flats in London as well, and I ended up buying tights in Portugal because it was a little breezy and cold, so you can wear the skirt. You can wear the tights under the skirt. So that's basically what I brought for clothes, and then like socks and stuff. But it was very, very like I was not there for fashion. It was purely function and like mixing and matching. So I would just recommend going as simple as possible with the weather conditions that you know to expect. Along the same lines of clothes, I would say if you know you're not going to have a washer, bring a couple of Tide Pods or buy a small container of laundry detergent because you're going to want to wash your clothes, especially because you're going to be cycling through them so quickly. So I would just pour a little bit, like a teeny, teeny bit of laundry detergent into a sink or bathtub, and then you can lay your clothes out to dry overnight, and that works pretty well. I have never tried to figure out a laundromat, so that's what I've always done. When I say what I've always done, I've done a European trip before, but I was with my sister, so a lot of the things I learned from her and then carried on to my solo trip. My next tip is to have photos or copies of your documents. So when I was traveling from the US to Portugal, I had to have special like immigration documents for COVID. And I made multiple copies of that so that I wasn't depending on having just one version. I also made copies of my passport. I made sure I had like scans of them available in case something happened to the documents. I also had all of the addresses of the Airbnbs that I was staying at printed out on a sheet so that if something was happening where my phone wasn't connecting to internet, I could look at the address and like get a taxi or something. You're also going to want to share your itinerary with a friend or family member. So I shared with my family where I was going to be, what dates, and then like the addresses and things like that, so that if I didn't call them for whatever reason or they weren't able to get a hold of me, that they would know where I was just in case anything happened. I didn't do this, I should have, but you're probably going to want to also have the embassy information for whatever country you are visiting from, just again, in case anything happens, you are able to get in contact with your country. So in addition to your luggage, you're also going to want to have a day pack. I opted out of doing a purse or something kind of impractical. I'm sure you could find something that's super cute and practical. I ended up taking a Kavu bag, and so that's the kind of bag. I'll put a picture somewhere around here, but that's the bag that like straps across your front and then you like carry it on your back. I also flipped it around so that the pouch part was on the front and then the strap was on the back, which made me look like a tourist. So I tried to not like have it super in front of me all the time. But those are nice because you can kind of like hold on to the strap, and the zipper is pretty inaccessible. It's like folded in a little bit. So I felt very secure and like I had everything on me. Also, for a couple of days, I used a money pouch like under my shirt. To me, that was a little bit excessive and not really necessary because I trusted that my documents were safe either on me or um, in my Airbnb. But if you didn't feel comfortable, I would recommend having a money pouch like on that's like on you and no one's gonna get it. I did bring a purse, like a big tote bag purse as my airplane carry-on, but it was rare that I actually used that outside of that instance because there was no zippers or anything. Like anyone could just grab anything that they wanted if you weren't looking. So definitely recommend a more secure bag. When you're traveling, when you get off of the airplane, you're gonna wanna get your currency right away. I know some people get currency in the US and then fly to the country that they're going to. And I've never done that, but if that would make you feel safer, definitely do that. I always get money first thing when I get to the place where I am, like my destination. I get money at the airport. You're gonna need cash for taxis. So taxis in the places I went, they didn't take like card or Apple Pay or anything like that. Um, as far as I know, I've just always done cash. So you're gonna want cash for taxis. And then also a tip for safety with the cash is keep your money in different places. So don't have all of your money in one place because if it gets stolen or if you leave it somewhere, that's all your money gone. So try to stay pretty close to what you think you're actually gonna need instead of taking more and having it be a bigger risk. So my next tip is for time change. So you're gonna want to stay up on your first day. So when you get to a new country, I'm pretty sure I read that it takes a day to get used to every hour that is different in the time difference. So where I was going, it was like 6 to 7 hours difference from where I live in the US. So it took me 6 or 7 days to get used to the time over there. For example, I forget what time I flew in, but say you fly in at 10 a.m. at local time. So like land in Portugal, it's 10 a.m. You're gonna want to stay up until your normal bedtime that night. Otherwise, if you take a nap and you end up napping for too long, it's just going to be miserable. So I would just recommend staying up, going to bed at what your normal bedtime is, and then getting up at a reasonably normal time as well. I had a really hard time my first trip to Europe because it was like an 8 or 9 hour difference, and I was like nauseous for a lot of days. So definitely recommend, um, yeah, just staying up. For some reason, the 6 to 7 hours this time didn't affect me as badly. Another note on general travel, in my experience, buying a travel pass is usually worth it for places that have subways. So the specific examples I'm thinking of are London and Paris. I got the Oyster card and then a Paris Metro card, and you basically pay for however many days you're going to be using the pass and then what zones you want to have access to. And they're fairly affordable. I don't remember exactly how much, but in my experience, it was worth it for how often I was going on the public transportation. So if the place you're going offers a card where you can just buy the card, have access to the zones unlimited for the amount of days that you pick, I would highly recommend doing that. Just so you're not worrying about like refilling your card all the time because that can be kind of annoying too. Especially if you don't know like the prices to get to and from each stop, if that makes sense. So this next tip I've had different experiences with, but I would say check if the museums you want to visit require pre-booking. So when I went to Europe for the first time in 2018, my sister and I went with a travel group, and I think that they must have coordinated with the museums ahead of time. So we had our tickets ready and we would just like go to the museum, grab our ticket, and be all set. So I didn't pre-book anything before I went this time, also partially because I didn't know what I was gonna want to see. But I would recommend to check if they require pre-booking because, for example, like one day I walked to the Louvre in Paris and they didn't have a time slot for a couple hours, and I ended up not going because I had been there already and I didn't really feel strongly that I needed to go there again. But it would have been nice if I could have like walked up and gotten a ticket. So definitely check if you have if the places you want to go require pre-booking, and yes, they'll give you like a specific time slot to come in as well. Next tip is for my sensitive stomach girlies. I would recommend going to a local grocery store and getting some basics to have at your hotel or your Airbnb so that you're not solely relying on eating out at restaurants. I have a very sensitive stomach, so a lot of nights I would just have like eggs and toast or like rice for dinner. I was eating rice for a lot of days because my stomach was pretty unsettled. So definitely recommend having snacks. Also, if it's late and you don't want to go out walking somewhere and you want like chocolate or something, definitely keep like a little stash of snacks at your place. I can't remember if I said this in the beginning, but for each place I went, I stayed for 5 to 7 days. So that was enough time for me to kind of have like a home base and get settled into that. Next tip is to bring a book to a restaurant and not for the reason that you think. So having a book at a restaurant when you're alone can be nice for like entertainment purposes, but also if you have to go to the bathroom or like step away for whatever reason, you don't want your waiter to think that you've left. And that gave me a lot of anxiety. I was like, well, what if I have to go to the bathroom? Or like, what if I need to leave this seat and they think I leave? So I started bringing a book so that if you need to step away, you can like put your book or leave your jacket or something on the chair and then they'll know that you're still there. So just kind of a formality, but that made me feel a lot more comfortable because it was giving me anxiety before I figured out to do that. I think I learned that from a blog, actually. I'll link the blog that I used below. I can't remember it off the top of my head right now, but I looked at a bunch of her posts for different countries. Um, and like she posts about safety and things that are worth seeing versus not worth seeing and stuff like that for so many countries. So I would recommend checking her out. But yeah, I'll put that down below. Next tip is if you're not feeling well, definitely go to a pharmacy. I'm thinking specifically of Paris when I talk about my pharmacy experience. Paris and Lisbon in Portugal. I also went to a pharmacy in Scotland to get my COVID test. But anyway, pharmacies there are so nice. Like you can, if you have an ailment, you can go up to the counter and say like, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. And the pharmacist will give you the medication like right away. Like they can prescribe it to you basically. And they tell you like, okay, take this 3 times a day, take this if you don't feel better in a couple days. Like they'll give you instructions and they'll give you exactly what you need. And it's not very expensive. I think I had to get like 2 or 3 medications in Paris and it was like $40 or something like that. So definitely don't shy out on the pharmacy experience. Okay, the next two are kind of just tips on what to do when you are in a different country. And number one is to see plays. I saw 2 plays in London. I saved them for London because I speak English, so I was able to understand the plays there. I would definitely recommend like going to a theater and watching a play. It's like so moving. I don't even know how to explain it. And you can like in London, you can get play tickets fairly cheap, like $30 same day. So that's what I did. I saw Hamilton and Wicked, and it was so fun to see Hamilton in London because it was like about the US and England and like the Revolutionary War. So it was interesting to like be an American around English people, and it was funny because we were all laughing at the same jokes and making fun of the king and stuff. So that was fun. Next, I put go to bookstores. I went to a bookstore in Portugal, and it's actually the oldest bookstore in the world, which I know is kind of crazy, but I ended up getting a poetry book and it's translated into English, Portuguese, and Spanish. So it's kind of fun to look at books in different languages. And they also have different covers in different countries. So if you really love a book and you want like an international version of it with like the international copy or the international cover, I would definitely recommend checking that out. Next tip seems kind of straightforward, but walk, 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 walk as much as you can. I regret not doing this more. I was having a really hard time with like my AirPods and like my GPS and stuff. It wasn't working properly. Like I was getting very confused and I was trying not to have my phone out because that can kind of like make you a target. So if you can listen to instructions and you don't have faulty AirPods, I would definitely recommend doing that and just walking as much as possible. Like a 45-minute walk kind of feels like a lot, and it is. It was definitely like very strenuous a couple of days when, especially because I ended up getting sick. So like I couldn't really walk as far when I was sick. But just walking around, seeing the sights, hearing the languages, and just, yeah, just like taking the time to walk versus taking public transportation when you're able. And also like bring comfortable shoes. That's the number one priority is comfortable shoes. Because even if you are taking transportation, you're almost definitely going to be walking more in Europe than you would be in your day-to-day life. Like I don't really walk anywhere. Like I can walk to like a coffee shop or something, but in like walking to places is kind of an exception out here. But over there, especially with the places where I use public transportation, you're gonna have to walk to a stop, like a bus stop or a metro stop, and that adds up to be a lot of walking. Gotta get a sip of coffee. So I have four more tips for you guys. The next tip is to try out an Airbnb experience. I did one in Portugal that was like wine and charcuterie tasting, like wine and cheese and meats. And there was only one couple there. So it was like me and this couple, and they were nice to talk to, and it was fun. It was very like anxiety inducing for me because I was alone and I didn't know. I thought for a minute I was going to be the only one, and it was a little nerve wracking. But if you pick an experience where you know that there's going to be other people, definitely go for it. And uh, you'll probably have a great time, like meeting locals and meeting other people who are visiting the area. They have a lot. They have like cooking classes. I saw in Paris um, they had like croissant making classes. And then when I was in Scotland, I was signed up for a gin tasting and I ended up not going because I was really sick. But yeah, that would have been so fun. Next one also feels kind of obvious, but be aware of your surroundings. A lot of articles online say that people can spot tourists right away. Um, so just be aware of that. Like, don't have your phone like just hanging around or your bag just hanging around, especially on transportation. And if you're sitting on like a patio or something like that, just make sure that your stuff is close to you and that like no one's following you, and just be very aware. Another tip that I've used is to like hook your bag, or like if you put your bag on the floor, put your chair leg like in, how do I explain this? Like put the loop of the bag handle, like put a chair leg in that. So if somebody comes by and grabs it, it'll get stuck on the chair. Oh, another tip on that note, somebody warned me before I went on the trip that their friend had been in, I think London or something, and was using a public restroom, and somebody grabbed, like put their hand over the stall door and grabbed their bag off of the hook. So I also kept bags really close to me in the restrooms as well. My last two tips are more like personal, like mental health type things, but tip number 19 is don't put too much pressure on yourself to do everything. Um, I would recommend doing a mix of touristy stuff and local stuff. So stay in a neighborhood where you have all the amenities that you need. There's things to see, there's places to walk. And then pick a couple of touristy things like Big Ben or um, like a castle or things like that. Pick what you really want to go to and go to those places. But don't get so wrapped up in not getting to do everything. Like in Paris, it's impossible to go to every museum in Paris. Also, eventually you'll probably get tired of going to museums. So and like historical sites. So just really pick the things that you want to see, and then outside of those, just really experience the culture around you and the city around you. My last tip is to be prepared for emotional highs and lows. You'll probably be super, super, super excited and stoked about everything when you get there, which is so fun and awesome. Um, and then there are going to be times where you feel really lonely and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting at this restaurant by myself? This is so awkward and embarrassing and weird. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to say, like, well, I should be having the time of my life. Like, I'm in this place. Why am I not having fun? Because it does get to you, like, oh, I wish I had someone here to share this with, after a while. So just be aware that there are probably going to be hard days and easy days, days where you know exactly what you want to do and you're having so much fun doing it. And then there's probably going to be some days where you feel like, well, why am I even doing any of this if I'm not sharing it with anyone? In those moments, I would say just like, yeah, just stay true to what you want to do and why you went on the trip in the first place. Also, like if you have friends or family members that you can call regularly, I would recommend doing that just so you kind of stay rooted to your life and you don't feel like you're fully floating, even though the floating part is kind of fun. There will just be days where you love being alone and days where you are wanting to feel more connection. So those are all the tips that I had for going on a solo trip. Like I said, I have only gone on one solo trip, but I've, traveled around a good amount and um, feel like I've learned a lot. So I hope that some of these tips are helpful. And if you're thinking about going on a solo trip, I would say just do it. You could even, it doesn't have to be international. You can just go to a different city for a couple of days and try it out that way. I don't really think that my next trip will be a solo trip just because there were a lot of times where I wanted to share what I was experiencing with friends and family. So I'll probably not do a solo trip next, but will definitely do them again in the future if there's a place that I really want to go. So thanks for watching this video. Hope there was some helpful tips. Definitely go for it if you're thinking about going on a solo adventure. And yes, all right, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to. Love to have you here. And all right, I'll see you later. Bye!